Alright, so now it's time to start to build our second project. I call it Creative Design because throughout this project we will use some nice and cool effects. Before we start to write the code, let's go ahead and describe the project. It will consist of a couple of different sections, so let's go through each of them. Right now you're looking at the first section, which consists of a couple of different parts. We have here 4 different navigation items. They are aligned vertically, and once we hover over them, then they will start to place horizontally, and also they will get the background. Next we have here a nice looking heading. Down below you can see the logo of the website, and also we have here a floating background which looks like the waves, and I think it looks pretty nice. Alright, next we have cards of the customers. Each card includes some font or some icons. Also we have images of the customers and the ratings. The cards have a nice hover effect. Next comes the team section. It includes the cards as well, but those cards are different. They represent the team members, and also they include some stories about the members which we can display by clicking this button. Alright, after that we have a contact section. It includes the image and a couple of input fields. They are placed in a 3D environment, and also they have a nice hover effect. Down below we have a simple footer with some copyright text. Okay, so that's it about the sections of the project. The navigation items allow us to navigate to the proper sections. If I click them, then we will go to the relevant sections smoothly. Besides that, we have here a fixed button at the bottom right corner of the page. If I click it, then it will scroll up the page to the first section. Alright, so that's it about the project. It's going to be responsive to all different screen sizes. If I inspect the page, switch to the responsive mode and check the project, then you will see that it looks good on different screen sizes. Alright, so we are ready to start to build this project. You can download the starter and the final source files. They are attached to this lecture. Alright, so we are ready to start to build our project. I've created a new folder on the desktop called Creative Design, in which I have another folder for the images. Let's go ahead and open this folder in VS Code and create our working files for HTML, CSS and JavaScript. I'm going to call them index.html, style.css and script.js. Then open index.html file and create a basic HTML document. For that I'm going to use Emmet. Let's insert here an exclamation mark and then hit tab or enter. Alright, so here we have basic HTML tags. First of all, I'm going to change the title. Let's insert here Creative Design. After that, let's link CSS and JavaScript files. I'm going to open link tag and specify the path of the CSS file. As for the JavaScript, I'm going to open script tag right above the closing body tag, and then we have to specify path of the file in the source attribute. Besides that, I'm going to bring in one more link for the font awesome icons. So let's go to Google and search for font awesome CDN.js. Then grab the first link, open the link tag in the head element and paste the copied link here. Okay, finally let's run the project to the browser. For that I'm going to use one of the VS Code packages called a live server. It allows us to run the project live to the browser and also make updates and changes without refreshing the page. Okay, let's go ahead and place the editor and the browser like so and get started. We're going to build the project section by section. We'll create the HTML markup for each section and then style them. So let's go ahead and create the HTML markup for the first section. First of all, I'm going to open a div tag, which is going to be the container. Then open section element with the class section1. So the first section will include a couple of different parts. We will have a navbar, then the heading followed by the logo, and also we'll have this floating background. Let's go ahead and create the navbar. I'm going to open HTML5 nav element with the class navbar. Then insert here link element with the class navbar link. And as the first item, let's insert here design. So overall we will have 4 nav items. Let's duplicate this line of code 3 times and then change the content. The second one is going to be customers. Then we will have team and contact. Okay, so that's it about navbar. Next I'm going to insert here a div tag which is going to be the floating background. I'm going to assign to it class floating bg. After that I'm going to create a heading. So let's open h1 heading tag with the class section1 heading. And as the content, let's write here creative design. And finally, let's create a logo which is going to be the font awesome icon. First of all, let's open div tag with the class logo. It's going to be the wrapper of the icon. And then insert here I element with the classes FAS, FA, Bezier, curve. Alright, that's it regarding the section 1. All the elements are prepared and now we have to start to write CSS. At first I'm going to create some common and default styles. Actually, throughout this project we're going to use 2 different Google fonts, so we need to bring in the link. Let's go to the Google Fonts website. Then I'm going to search for font called Monotone. Besides that, we need Pelota text. Actually, I'm going to select here a couple of styles. Let's select all the styles except italic. Then grab the link from here and paste it in CSS file. Alright, so as we said, we're going to create some common styles. Therefore, I'm going to select every element using asterisk. First of all, let's get rid of default margin and padding from every element. Let's set both of them to 0. Then I'm going to set box sizing to border box. Also get rid of default underline from the link elements using text decoration none. Next one is going to be list style type none. It will get rid of the default bullets from the li elements, I mean the list items. After that I'm going to remove default outline from every element, so let's set outline to none. Next I'm going to define the font family. Let's use here Pelota text cursive. And lastly, let's set font weight to 400. Okay, so as you can see, all the styles are applied. Throughout this project, I'm going to use rem as the measurement unit. Right now, 1 rem is equal to 16 pixels because by default, the font size of the HTML element equals 16 pixels. I'm going to convert 1 rem into 10 pixels because I think it would be more convenient and simple to use. So in order to do that, we have to decrease the font size of the HTML and make it 62.5%. So as you can see, the elements became smaller and now 1 rem equals 10 pixels. Alright, so finally we can start styling the first section. Before we do that, I'm going to add some comments because I forgot it. Let's insert comments in the HTML file. We need here section 1, end of section 1. Then in the CSS file, I'm going to insert here comment styles. end of common styles, and then we need section 1, end of section 1. Okay, let's go ahead and select section element. First of all, I'm going to define width and height. Let's set width to 100%. As for the height, I'm going to make it 100% of the viewport. Then I'm going to set background to white. Actually, by default the background is white, but anyway, let's define it. Okay, now I'm going to take care of the floating background, and to demonstrate how it works, at first I'm going to make it smaller and show you how it works, and then after that we'll increase its size. So let's go ahead and select div element with the class floating background. At first, let's define width and height. I'm going to make both of them 70 rem. Then change background color. I'm going to use RGBA value. Let's insert here 50, 231, 255, and then the opacity 0.8. Okay, so here we have a background. Next I'm going to place it in the center. Let's set the position to absolute. Then in order to position the element according to its parent element, I'm going to set position relative for the section element. After that, we need to define the top and left properties. Let's set top to 15%. As for the left property, in order to center the element perfectly, I'm going to use the calc function. We need to subtract half of the width of the element to 50%. In this case, the element will be centered horizontally. So we need here calc, and the calculation is going to be 50% minus 35 rem. Okay, so right now that's it about the first background. Next we need to create the second one, and I'm going to do that using the before pseudo element. So let's go ahead and select floating bg followed by the before pseudo element. First of all, let's define content, make it empty. Then I'm going to define width and height. Let's make both of them 100%. Also change the background color. I'm going to use the same color but with different opacity. So we need RGBA 50231 255 and the opacity 0.1. After that, I'm going to set position to absolute. And then we need to define top and left positions. I'm going to make both of them 0. Okay, right now the element is not visible because it is placed behind the first background. And in order to prove that, we can just change the left position. Let's make it, let's say 20%. So now you can see it clearly. Now the before pseudo element, I mean the second background, is visible. Okay, let's get back here 0. Next we need to change the shape of those elements. We need to make them rounded using border radius, but we will use different values for each element. So for the main background, I'm going to set border radius to 45%. As for the second element, let's make border radius 40%. Okay, so now everything is ready. We just need to animate both elements. For that, I'm going to use CSS keyframes. It allows us to create some CSS rules and then apply them to the elements using animation property. Let's create CSS keyframes. We need @, then the keyword keyframes, followed by the name of the animation. I'm going to call it rotate. So we're going to define two different steps, the starting point and the ending point. I mean 0% and 100%. And we need to rotate the element by 360 degrees. So at 0%, I mean at the starting point, we need transform with the rotate function and with the value 0. As for the 100%, at the ending point, we need transform, rotate 360 degrees. So during the animation, the element will rotate once by 360 degrees. Alright, so to apply these styles to the backgrounds, we have to use animation property for both elements. At first we need to define the name of the animation, which is rotate. Then we have to define the duration. It's going to be 30 seconds. And also we need to make the animation infinite. So let's insert here infinite. Okay, so as you can see, the elements are rotating and we have a nice animation effect. Now we have to change the size and the position of those backgrounds. By the way, we will use viewport width as the measurement unit because it will allow us to make the element responsive to different screen sizes. To demonstrate why we're going to use viewport width, let's change rem, make it viewport width, and also decrease the size. Let's make it, let's say 40 viewport width. And also change here 35 rem into 20 viewport width. So if I make the window smaller, then the backgrounds will change their sizes accordingly. Alright, actually we need to increase the width and height. Let's make both of them 150 viewport width. Also change 20 into 75 viewport width. Besides that, we need to fix the position. Let's set top position to minus 125 viewport width. Okay, so the background is placed correctly. We have here just one problem. We don't need this scroll bar down here, so in order to fix that, I'm going to assign to body element overflow X hidden. Alright, that's it regarding floating background. It looks pretty much nice and modern, so I hope you like it. Now we have to take care of the rest of the elements, I mean navbar, heading and the logo. Let's go ahead and start with the navbar. We have 4 different navigation items and I'm going to place them horizontally in a row, but each item will be aligned vertically. Let's go ahead and select navbar. Right now the navbar is placed behind the floating background, so in order to make it visible I'm going to use the z-index property. But before that we need to define the position because otherwise the z-index property won't work. So let's set position to relative and then use z-index with the value that is going to be higher than 0. Let's make it 20. Okay, so the navbar is visible and I'm going to change its position. Let's place it a little bit down. So I'm going to set top position to 4 rem. Next, I'm going to create some space between the navigation items and also align them using flexbox. So let's go ahead and set display property to flex. And then in order to create space between the items, I'm going to use justify content property with the value spaced evenly. Alright, that's it about the navbar. Let's go ahead and customize the navbar link. Let's select it and first of all increase font size, make it 2.2 rem. Also I'm going to make the links bolder. Then create some space between the letters, make it 0.2 rem and change the color. Let's set color to white. Okay, so the items look nice. As remember from the finished project, the items should be aligned vertically and once we hover over them, then they should place back horizontally. And also they should get a background color. Alright, in order to place them vertically, I'm going to decrease the width of the navbar link. And besides that, I'm going to use one of the properties called word wrap with the value break word. So let's set width to 1.5 rem. And then use word wrap with the value break word. Alright, that's it about the navbar link. Now it's time to create a hover effect. Once we hover over the item, we need to increase the width and also change the background color. So let's go ahead and select navbar link with hover. Then set width to 15 rem. As for the background color, I'm going to use RGBA value, I mean the white color, and the opacity 0.2. Okay, so once we hover over the items, then they will place horizontally, and also they will get a new background color. As you can see, the items are not aligned in the center of the box, and also we need a transition to get this smooth effect. So first of all, let's align them in the center using text align center. We need two different transitions, one on hover and the second one for the link itself. So let's use transition with the values all, 2.5 seconds. And also we need transition all, 0.5 seconds. This second transition will allow us to align the items vertically a little bit faster. Alright, so everything works fine. We have here a nice hover effect. Actually, you may notice here that we're getting a scroll bar on the right side, but that's not a problem. It will be fixed once we proceed and add other sections to the project. Okay, next I'm going to style a heading element, so let's go ahead and select it. At first, let's increase its font size, make it 8 rem. Then change the font family. In this case, I'm going to use font called monotone cursive. Next, I'm going to take care of the position of the heading. We have to place it in the center. For that, I'm going to use position absolute. Then we need top position. Let's set it to 18 viewport width. And also I'm going to define left position with value 50%. Right now the heading is not centered. We need to move it to the left side by 50% of its width. And for that we need to use transform property with translate function. In this case we need translate with X direction. And as the value I'm going to insert here minus 50%. So now the element is perfectly centered. Okay, after that let's create some shadow effect. I'm going to use text shadow. We need 0.3 rem 3 times and the color 888. Next I'm going to change the color. Let's make it white. Also I'm going to set background color to white as well. And then increase the width of the element. Let's make it 85 rem. Okay, so now the heading looks much better. We need to center it inside of the box, and for that let's use text align center. Also create some space inside of the box. I'm going to set padding to 0.8 rem at the top and bottom. As for the left and right sides, let's make it 1.6 rem. And also I'm going to make corners of the box slightly rounded using border radius with value 0.8 rem. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to do is to decrease slightly the opacity. Let's make it 0.9. Alright, so with the heading we are done. Let's move on and customize the last item in this section, which is the logo. First of all, let's take care of its position. I'm going to place it down below in the center of the page. Let's use again the same technique. Let's set position to absolute. Then define top position, make it 70%. As for the left property, we need to set it to 50%. And then we need transform with the translate X function. Let's insert here minus 50%. Okay, so the logo is positioned, and now let's go ahead and customize it. Let's select I element and increase its font size, make it 15 rem. Then I'm going to change the color. Let's use here RGBA value 50 to 31 to 55 and 0.8. And also I'm going to use text shadow. In this case I'm going to use multi-level text shadow. So at first insert here 0.1 rem, 0.1 rem, 0.2 rem, and the color D. As for the second shadow, let's make it on the left side. We need here negative values, minus 0.1 rem, minus 0.1 rem, then 0.2 rem, and the same color. Alright, that's it. the logo is customized, and actually with the first section we are done. Let's move on and take care of the next section. The next section is going to be the customer section. It will consist of the heading and 3 different cards. Each of the cards will have a couple of different elements. I mean the quotes, then the paragraph followed by the stars, and the image of the customer with its name. Alright, let's go ahead and start to create the HTML markup. Let's insert new comments, section 2, end of section 2, then open section element with the class section 2. I'm going to create h1 heading element with the class section heading and with the content customers. Then open div element, which will be the wrapper of the cards. I'm going to assign to it class customers wrapper. Then we need another div tag, which is going to be the card itself. Let's assign to it class customer. Okay, so as we said, we will have here a couple of different elements. The first one is going to be the quotes, which will be represented by the font awesome icon. So let's open I element with the classes FAS, FA, quote, left. Next we need a paragraph with the class customer text. And then let's insert here some dummy text. After that, I'm going to create a customer rating. We will have 5 stars, 4 of them will be filled. As for the last one, only its half part will be filled. So at first I'm going to open div tag, which is going to be the wrapper of the rating. Let's assign to it class customer rating. Then open I element and assign to it classes FAS, FA star. I'm going to duplicate it 4 times and then change class name for the last I element. We need here FA star half alt. Okay, that's it about the rating. Next I'm going to insert here an image. Let's select image from the images folder. We need here customer img1 and also assign class attribute to the image with the value customer img. After that, let's open h4 heading tag with the class customer name and insert here the name of the customer, let's say Jane Lee. Alright, that's it about the first card. Overall we will have 3 of them, so let's go ahead and duplicate the card twice and then make some changes. So here for the 5th star we need class FA star because it will be filled as well like the 4 other stars. Then change the name of the image. We need here img2 and also change the name of the customer. Let's insert here Bob Smith. As for the 3rd card, the 5th star will be empty, so I'm going to change here the class name. Instead of FAS, we need here FAR and then FA star. Then change the name of the image. We need here 3 and also as the name of the customer, let's insert here Anne Brown. Alright, so all 3 cards are created and now we have to customize this section. Let's create here new comments, section 2, end of section 2, then select section elements and first of all define width and height. I'm going to set width to 100%. As for the height, let's make it 100% of the viewport. Before I proceed to style the section element, let's go ahead and decrease the size of the images because right now they are too bigger. So let's go ahead and select customer img. I'm going to set width and height, both of them, to 10 rem. And also I'm going to use here object fit cover in order to maintain the quality of the image. Okay, after that let's align elements inside of the section using flexbox. I'm going to set display property to flex, then we need to place items in the column. So we need to change the direction. Let's make it column. And then in order to create some space around the flex items, I'm going to use justify content space around. Alright, that's it. Section element is customized. And next I'm going to take care of the heading element. So let's select it with the class section heading. First of all, I'm going to increase the font size. Let's make it 10 rem. Also change the font weight. I'm going to make it bold. Then I want to transform text into uppercase. And finally change the color, make it 999. So next we need to place the heading in the center, and for that I'm going to use text align center. Also let's decrease the opacity, make it 0.1. And lastly, add to the heading some shadow effect using text shadow with the values 2 rem, 2 rem, 4 rem, and the color AAA. Alright, so the heading is styled. I think it looks quite nice. So let's go ahead and take care of the cards. First of all, I'm going to select the wrapper div element, which has the class name customers wrapper. So I'm going to place the cards horizontally in a row, and for that let's use flexbox. Then in order to create some space between the flex items, let's use justify content with the value space evenly. And then in order to align items in the center, let's use align items center. Okay, so the elements are aligned, and now we need to style the card itself. Let's select it. At first define its width, make it 35 rem. Then I'm going to set height to 50 rem. And also change the background color, make it EEE. Okay, next I'm going to align the elements inside of the card using flexbox. So let's use display flex. Then we need to place elements in a column. So let's change the direction, make it column. And then after that, let's center the elements horizontally using align items center. Alright, besides that, I'm going to make the corners of the card rounded. Use border radius with the value of 0.5 rem. Also, I'm going to create some space inside of the card using padding. Let's set it to 2 rem on all 4 sides. And finally, use box shadow. I'm going to create multi-level shadow. Let's insert here 1 rem, 1 rem, then 2 rem, and the color DDD. And also create the shadow on the left side. We need here -1 rem, then again -1 rem, 2 rem, and the color EEE. Alright, so with the cards we are almost done. We just need to align them in a kind of different way, and then we'll customize the elements inside of the card. So I'm going to change the position of the first and third cards. I will place the first card a little bit down, and for that use again flexbox. I'm going to select the first card. So we need here customer followed by the pseudo class called first child. It will select the first card, and then in order to place it a little bit down, we need align self with the value flex end. It will place the card at the bottom of the container. So right now nothing is changed because we need to define the height of the wrapper. So let's assign to it height with the value 70%. So now the first card is placed a little bit down. Let's go ahead and move the third card as well. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this code and then change first child into last child. And also instead of flex end, we need flex start. Alright, so the cards are aligned. Let's go ahead and start to customize the items inside of the card. Let's start with the quotes. I'm going to select it with its class FA, quote left. Let's increase the font size, make it 4 rem, and also change the color. I'm going to use here color F08E0F. Alright, next I'm going to take care of the paragraph. Let's increase its font size, make it 1.8 rem. Then I'm going to create some space at the top and bottom using margin. Let's set it to 2.5 rem and 0. And also I'm going to justify the text using text align and justify. Okay, before we move on and style the ratings, I'm going to create a little indentation. So I'm going to select first letter of the paragraph. Let's select paragraph itself and then attach to it first letter, which is the pseudo element, and then define margin on the left side, make it 1 rem. Okay, that's it about the paragraph. Let's move on and style the ratings. Select I element, increase the font size, make it 2 rem. As for the color, let's use again F08E0F. Okay, so the ratings look nice and we have to move on to the image. Let's create some space at the top and bottom of the image and also make it rounded. We need margin with the values 2 rem and 0. And then in order to make the image rounded, we need border radius with the value 50%. Okay, that's it about the images. Finally, we have to customize the name of the customer. So let's select this element. Increase the font size, make it 2 rem, and also make the font slightly bolder using font weight 700. Alright, so that's it. We are almost done with this section. The only thing that I want to do is to create a little hover effect. Once we hover over the cards, I want to change the shadow. So let's select card with hover, then define box shadow with the following values. We need here 2 rem twice, then 3 rem and the color D. Then we need -2 rem, again -2 rem, 3 rem and the color E. Besides that, let's use transition with the values box shadow and the duration 0.5 seconds. Alright, so we have here a nice hover effect, and actually with this section we are done. Now we can move on and take care of the next one. In the next section we will have again cards. This section is going to be about the team. It will consist of the heading and 3 cards representing the team members. So each card will include the image of the team member, then we will have a full name with the position of the team member, followed by the skills, and also we will have a button at the bottom of the card. Besides that, you can see here another button at the top right corner of the card, and if I click it, then this line will rotate and some information will display nicely. Okay, so that's it about this section. Let's go ahead and start to create the HTML markup. I'm going to insert here new comments, section 3, end of section 3, then open section element with the class section 3, and insert here h1 heading tag. I'm going to assign to it the same class that we used for the previous section heading, because both of them will have the same styles, so let's assign to it section heading. As the content, I'm going to insert here team. Okay, next we have to create cards. So first of all, open a div tag, which is going to be the wrapper. I'm going to assign to it class team wrapper. Then open another div, which is going to be the card itself. Let's assign to it class team member. So the card will consist of a couple of different elements. The first one is going to be the image. So let's open image element and select team member 1.jpg. Also, I'm going to assign to it class team member img. Alright, next I'm going to open the h2 heading tag, which will include the full name and the position of the member. So I'm going to assign to it class team member name. Let's insert here Nick Smith. Then I'm going to open span tag and insert here the position of the team member. Let's write designer. Okay, after that comes skills. I'm going to create list. Let's assign to it class team member skills. So overall we will have 5 list items. So let's create the first one. It's going to be Photoshop. Let's write here the abbreviation PS. Then duplicate li element 4 times and change the content. The second one is going to be Figma. Then we will have HTML5, CSS3, and then AI, which stands for Adobe Illustrator. Alright, next I'm going to create a button for projects. It's going to be the link element. Let's assign to it class projects btn, and as the content, right here projects. Okay, now I'm going to take care of the story of the team member. At first, I'm going to create a button. So let's open div tag with the class story btn. Besides that, I'm going to use another attribute called title. It will pop up some text once we hover over the button. So let's insert here my story. Next, we need another div tag, which is going to be the line. So assign to it class story btn line and leave this div element empty. Okay, so this part will consist of 2 different elements. We will have a heading and a paragraph. Let's create div element with class story. It's going to be the wrapper. Then open h4 heading element with the class story heading and with the content about me. After that, we need paragraph with the class story paragraph, and then insert here some dummy text. Alright, so the first card is ready. As we said, overall we will have 3 of them. So I'm going to duplicate it twice and then make some changes. I'm going to change the name of the image. It's going to be team member 2. Then change the full name. We need here, let's say, Bob Brown. As for the skills, let's insert here AE, After Effects, then PR, which stands for Premiere Pro. Then let's leave HTML and CSS as they are. And for the last item, let's insert here, let's say, Inkscape. Okay, that's it about the second team member. Let's make some changes for the third one. We need here team member 3, then the name John Doe. Next, I'm going to change the position. We need here developer. As for the skills, let's insert here JavaScript, then React.js. The next one is going to be Node.js, then MongoDB, and for the last item, let's insert Python. Okay, so HTML markup is ready, and now we can start to customize this section. Let's go ahead and create new comments. Section 3, end of section 3. Then define width and height. I'm going to set width to 100%. As for the height, let's make it 100% of the viewport. After that, I'm going to align the heading and the wrapper using Flexbox. We need to set display to flex. Then we have to place flex items vertically in a column, so we need to change the direction. Let's make it column. And then after that, in order to create some space between the items, we need justify content with the value space between. And finally, create some space at the top and bottom inside of the section. Let's use padding. Let's set it to 5 rem and 0. Alright, that's it about this section element. Next we will have a heading, which is already styled, and before we move on to the next element, I'm going to grab the styles from the previous section and paste them into common styles. We will make the code cleaner and understandable. Okay, let's go ahead and select Theme Wrapper. I'm going to align cards horizontally in a row, so let's use Flexbox. Then I'm going to create some space between the cards using Justify Content space evenly. And also I'm going to place cards in the center vertically using Align Items Center. Besides that, I'm going to define the height of the wrapper as well, because we're going to align cards like it was in the previous section. So let's set height to 70%. Okay, after that, let's select the card itself, I mean a team member. At first, let's define its width, make it 35 rem, and then change the background color. I'm going to use here color FFF EEE. Okay, next I'm going to create the space inside of the card. So let's use padding with the following values. We need 1 rem, then 1 rem, then make the padding 2 rem at the bottom, and then again use 1 rem. Besides that, let's use box shadow. I'm going to use multi-level box shadow. So let's insert here 1 rem, then again 1 rem, then 2 rem, and the color DDD. As for the second shadow, it's going to be placed on the left side. So let's use here negative values, -1 rem, then again -1 rem, 2 rem, and the color EEE. Alright, so before we proceed, I think it would be better if we hide this story for a while. It will make our working process more convenient. So let's select story and assign to it display none. Okay, so the story is hidden, and now I'm going to style each of the elements of the card. Let's go ahead and start with the image. I'm going to define its width. Let's make it 100%. And also I'm going to make the corners of the image slightly rounded using border radius with value 0.5 rem. Okay, next I'm going to customize the name of the member. So let's select it. At first, let's increase the font size, make it 2.3 rem. Then I'm going to make font bolder using font weight 700. Also change the color. I'm going to use here color 796717. And also create some space at the top using margin top with the value 2 rem. Okay, so the name looks good. Let's move on and customize the position of the member. Let's select name followed by the span, and then change the font size, make it 1.7 rem. Alright, let's move on and take care of the skills. I'm going to place list items horizontally in a row. So at first, select the UL element. I'm going to use again Flexbox. We need to set display property to flex. It will place the flex items in a row. And then, in order to create some space between the items, use justify content with the value space between. Besides that, I'm going to create some space at the top and bottom. So let's use margin, set it to 1 rem at the top, then 0, then 2 rem at the bottom, and then again 0. Alright, so the list items are aligned, and now I'm going to style them. Let's select li element. Change the font size, make it 1.5 rem, and then change the color. I'm going to use here color 50, 50, and then again 50. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the button. Let's select it. First of all, I'm going to change the background color. Let's use here FAB34A. Then change the color of the text, make it white. Also, I'm going to create some space inside of the button. Let's use padding and set it to 0.5 rem at the top and bottom, and then 1.5 rem on the left and right sides. Besides that, I'm going to make the button rounded using border radius with the value 5 rem. Okay, so as you can see, the button already looks good. Let's go ahead and increase the font size, make it 1.5 rem, and also I'm going to create some space between the letters using letter spacing 0.2 rem. Okay, so that's it regarding the first part of the card. Next, I'm going to customize the button, which will be placed at the top right corner of the card. So let's go ahead and select Story BTN, and first of all define its width and height. I'm going to set both of them to 4 rem, and then change the background color, make it 222. So here we have the button. First of all, we need to fix its position. So let's set its position to absolute. Then, in order to align it according to the parent element, we need to define position relative for the card. And then define the top and right properties. I'm going to set both of them to -1 rem. Okay, so the button is positioned in the right way. Let's make it rounded. Use border radius with the value 5 rem. Okay, so right now that's it about the button. Now I'm going to take care of the line. So let's go ahead and select it. Let's define its width and height. Make width 100%. As for the height, I'm going to set it to 0.1 rem. And also change the background color, make it white. So right now the line is not visible because it is placed at the top of the button. So we need to fix its position. Actually, I'm going to place it in the center of the button, and for that let's use Flexbox. So now the line is visible, and the next thing that I want to do is to create a little space inside of the button. Let's use padding with the value 0.5 rem, and also change the type of the cursor, make it pointer. Alright, so with the button we are finally done. Now I'm going to take care of the story, which right now is hidden. So at first let's make it visible. I'm going to get rid of display none from here. So as you can see, now it's visible, and we have to customize it. Let's define its width and height. I'm going to make both of them 100%, and then change the background color. Let's use here RGBA value. Let's insert here 2536969, and then the opacity 0.9. Next, I'm going to take care of its position. It should be extended to the entire card. So let's set position to absolute, and then make left and top properties, both of them 0. After that, let's align the elements inside of the story using Flexbox. I'm going to place them in the center. So let's set display property to flex. Then we need to change the direction, make it column. And then after that, in order to place the flex items in the center, both horizontally and vertically, I'm going to use justify content center and align items center. Okay, lastly, let's create some space inside of the story. Let's use padding and set it to 2 rem. Alright, with the story, with the wrapper, we are done. Let's go ahead and customize the heading and the paragraph. Let's select the story heading and increase its font size, make it 4 rem. Then I'm going to make the font bolder using font weight 700. Change the color, make it white. And also I'm going to create some space at the bottom using margin bottom with the value 2 rem. Okay, after that, let's select paragraph. Increase the font size, make it 1.8 rem. Then I'm going to change the color. Let's make it EEE. Also, I'm going to justify the text using text align, justify, and then create some space between the letters using letter spacing 0.1 rem. Alright, so the paragraph is customized as well. The only thing that I'm going to do is to create a little indentation, and for that I'm going to use text indent property with the value 2 rem. Okay, that's it regarding the story. Now we have to make it work. But before that, we have here a tiny issue. The button is placed behind the story. So in order to fix that, I'm going to use the z-index property. We have to set it to some higher value than 0, let's say 50. Alright, so we are ready to make this button work. For that, I'm going to use JavaScript. At first, let's hide the stories. For that, I'm going to use transform with the scale function. In order to make the element hidden, we have to set the scale to 0. Okay, so as you can see, the stories are hidden. Let's go to the JavaScript file and first of all select the buttons. For that, I'm going to use query selector all method. We have to specify here the class name, story btn. Actually, query selector all method returns the node list, which is an array-like object. Each item has its index number, and also the list itself has a length property. Okay, so we have to loop through these buttons and attach to each of them an event listener with the click event. In order to loop through the list, I'm going to use one of the array helper methods called forEach. It allows us to execute the function for each list item separately. So let's go ahead and use forEach. It takes one parameter, which is going to be the callback function, and this function will be executed for each list item. This callback function itself takes one parameter, which is going to be the current item from the list, I mean the button. So let's insert your btn. And next we need to attach an event listener to the button. Let's specify here the type of the event, which is going to be click. And besides that, event listener accepts the second parameter, which is the arrow function, I mean the callback function, and it's going to be executed once we click the element. Okay, now let's go ahead and test if click event works. I'm going to run to the console. Let's say clicked. So if I inspect the page and switch to the console tab and then click the button, we will get clicked in the console. So it means that everything works fine, and now we have to make the story work. I mean, we have to display it on click, and also we need to rotate the button. So let me explain what we're going to do. We will create a new class in CSS and we will define styles with this class, and then we will add this class name to the story and to the button itself. We will do that using the toggle method because we need to display the story on the first click and hide it on the next one. So as we said, for that we have to use a method called toggle. So let's go ahead and add a new class to the button. We need btn. And now we have to use one of the properties called class list. It gives us all the classes that the element has, and also it allows us to access the different methods like toggle, add, and remove. So we need class list followed by the toggle method. And inside of the parentheses we have to specify the class name. Let's call it change. So now if I display elements and find story btn and then click it, you will see that it gets class change on click, and then on the next click it is removed. Okay, now we can already rotate the button on click. Let's go to the CSS file, and we have to select story btn with class change, and then use transform with the rotate function. I'm going to rotate element by 405 degrees. Then use transition with transform and with the duration 0.5 seconds. Okay, so if I click the button, then it will rotate nicely. Now in the same way we need to display the story. Let's go back to the JavaScript file and add plus change to the story as well. Actually, the story is the sibling of the button, so I'm going to use one of the properties called next element sibling. We need btn followed by the next element sibling. Then again we need to use class list followed by the toggle method, and as a class name we need to insert here change. Okay, let's go to the CSS file and select story with change. Then use transform. So in order to make the story visible, I'm going to increase scale back to 1. And also use transition with the values all and 0.5 seconds. Alright, now if I click the button, then the story will display. So it works fine, but that's not what we want. As you can see, the scale is increasing from the center, but in our case we need to increase it from the top right corner of the card. In order to achieve that, we have to change the transform origin property. By default it is set to center, and in our case it's going to be top right. Okay, so now it comes from the top right corner, but still it's not what we want. In order to make the effect much nicer, I'm going to manipulate with border radius. By default, I'm going to set border radius to 50 rem. It belongs to the top left corner. Then we need 0 for the top right corner, and then 50 rem for bottom right corner and for bottom left corner as well. Also, I'm going to set border radius to 0 with class change. Okay, so now everything works perfectly, and before we finish this section, I'm going to do a couple of more things. I'm going to align cards differently. I'm going to place the first card at the top of the wrapper. As for the third card, I'm going to place it at the bottom of the wrapper. So let's go ahead and select the first card using one of the pseudo classes called first child. In order to place the card at the top of the wrapper, let's use align self with the value flex start. Then let's duplicate this code. I'm going to change first child into last child, and also instead of flex start we need flex end. Okay, so as you can see the cards are aligned. And lastly, I'm going to create a little hover effect. Actually, I'm going to decrease opacity by default. Let's set it to 0.7 and then increase it on hover. So let's select team member with hover, set opacity to 1, and then use transition with the values opacity 0.5 seconds. Okay, so finally we are done. We have finished working on this section. So let's move on and take care of the next one. The next section is going to be the contact section. Let's take a look at the finished project. So as you can see, the contact section consists of 3 different parts. We have an image on the left side, then a couple of input fields on the right side, and down below we have a little footer with some copyright text. The first 2 parts, I mean the image and the input fields, are placed in a 3D environment and they have a nice hover effect. Actually, I want to mention here one thing. While we were working on the project, I have noticed that sometimes for some reason the entire page goes to the left side, and it happens in Google Chrome. So the solution that I have thought of was to assign overflow X hidden to the container instead of the body. Besides that, I'm going to define the width. Let's make it 100%. Alright, that's it. Let's go ahead and start to create the HTML markup. I'm going to insert here new comments, section 4, end of section 4, then open section element with the class section 4. So the section element will consist of a couple of different parts. The first part that I'm going to create is heading, which will be similar to the previous section headings. So let's open h1 heading element with the class section heading. And as the content, let's insert here contact. Next, I'm going to take care of the form, but first of all, let's create a div tag which is going to be the container of the form. Let's use here class form container. Then insert here an image. I'm going to select form img.png from the images folder, and also let's assign to the image element class form img. Okay, after that I'm going to create the form itself. Let's assign to it class contact form. So the form will consist of 4 different elements. We will have 2 input fields, then the text area, and also the submit button. So let's create input element with type text, and also I'm going to use here placeholder attribute with the value your name. Then I'm going to duplicate this line of code, change type attribute, we need here email. As for the placeholder, I'm going to insert here your email. Next comes text area. I'm going to assign to it placeholder attribute with the value your message. Okay, after that I'm going to create submit button, and I'm going to do that using input element but with type submit, and also we need here value which is going to be sent. Okay, so the last element that we need to create is the footer, I mean the paragraph. Let's insert it outside of the form element with the class copyright, and then insert here some text like copyright, followed by the copyright sign, which is going to be the HTML5 entity. We need here ampersand, copy, semicolon, then code and create, and also all the rights reserved. Alright, that's it. Everything is prepared to start this section. Let's go ahead and insert new comments in CSS file. We need section 4, then end of section 4, then select section element and define its width and height. I'm going to set width to 100%. As for the height, let's make it 130% of the viewport. Okay, after that I'm going to align the section heading, the form container, and the footer using flexbox. So we need display flex. Then we need to place elements vertically in a column, so I'm going to change the direction. Let's make it column. Also, in order to create some space around the flex items, let's use justify content space around. And then in order to place elements horizontally in the center, let's use align item center. Okay, that's it about the section element. Let's move on and customize the form container. At first, let's define its width and height. Let's make width 80%. As for the height, I'm going to set it to 40%. And also change the background color. Let's use here color E5, E9, FF. Okay, now we need to place the image and those input fields side by side, and for that I'm going to use again Flexbox. we need display flex. Then in order to place the elements in the center vertically, let's use align item center, and then create some space between the items using justify content space evenly. Alright, lastly, let's create a little shadow and make the container slightly rounded. So I'm going to use box shadow. It's going to be the multi-level shadow, so let's insert here 0.3 rem twice, then 0.4 rem, and the color C. As for the second shadow, I'm going to make it on the left side, so we need here negative values, minus 0.1 rem twice, then 0.4 rem and the same color. And also use border radius with the value 0.5 rem. Alright, now we can customize the image, so let's go ahead and select it, and at first define its width. I'm going to make it 55 rem. Next I'm going to change the background color. In this case, let's use RGBA value. We need here 50231.255 and the opacity 0.8. And also create some space inside of the element using padding. Let's make it 5 rem on all 4 sides. Okay, let's move on and add a couple of more styles to the image. I'm going to decrease its opacity. Let's make it 0.8. Also create some shadow effect. It's going to be on the left side, so we need here minus 3 rem, then 3 rem, 4 rem, and the color AAA. And also create little border radius. Let's set it to 0.5 rem. Alright, that's it regarding the image. Now I'm going to customize the form element. Let's select it and define its width. I'm going to make it 45 rem. And then change the background color, make it white. Okay, next I'm going to align elements inside of the form, and for that let's use again Flexbox, set display to flex, and then change direction, make it column in order to align elements vertically. So as you can see, the elements are placed vertically in a column. Let's go ahead and add a couple of more styles to the form. I'm going to create space inside of the element using padding. Let's make it 3 rem. Then set border radius to 0.5 rem. And also I'm going to create shadow with the values 3 rem twice and then 4 rem with the color AAA. Alright, that's it about the form element. Let's move on and customize the input fields. Actually, we have here 2 inputs and the text area and also the submit button, which is represented by the input element. All of those elements will have a couple of common styles, so let's go ahead and select input and also the text area. First of all, I'm going to define margin and padding. We need to create space around the elements and also inside of them. So let's set margin to 1 rem. As for the padding, I'm going to set it to 1 rem as well. Next, I'm going to change the font size, make it 1.3 rem. Also, I'm going to create some space between the letters. Let's set it to 0.1 rem. Then get rid of default border. I'm going to set it to none. Also, I'm going to make the corners rounded. Let's set border radius to 2 rem. And lastly, I'm going to create box shadow. In this case, we need shadow from the inner side. So I'm going to insert here inset with the values 0.1 rem, 0.1 rem, then 0.2 rem, and the color DDD. And also I'm going to create the same shadow on the left side. So let's insert here inset, minus 0.1 rem, minus 0.1 rem, then 0.2 rem, and the same color. Alright, that's it about the common styles. Now I want to customize the text area and the button separately. Let's start with the text area. As you know, we can change the size of the text area manually, but then it will mess up the layout. So I want to limit its width and height. So let's go ahead and select text area. I'm going to define max height and also mean height. Let's set max height to 15 rem. As for the mean height, I'm going to set it to 10 rem. And besides that, I'm going to define max width and min width. So let's set max width to 100%. As for the min width, let's make it 70%. So now it works much better. Let's move on and start the submit button. Let's select it using the type attribute. So in this case, I'm going to select contact form followed by the input element. And in square brackets, we have to specify type as submit. Let's change the background color. Let's use here RGBA 50231.255 and 0.8. Also change the color, make it white. So now the button looks much better. Let's go ahead and add to it some more styles. I'm going to make the font bolder. So let's set font weight to bolder. Also create some space between the letters. Make it 0.5 rem. And finally change the type of the cursor, make it pointer. Alright, so the button is customized, and before we continue, I'm going to add to it a little hover effect. So let's grab this selector from here and add to it hover. I'm going to change the background color. Let's make it 32E7FF, and then use transition with background color and with the duration 0.5 seconds. Alright, so the form element is customized, and before we move on and start the paragraph down below, I'm going to create some 3D effects. First of all, in order to create a 3D environment, we need to use one of the properties called perspective. We need to assign it to the parent element, which is the form container. So let's set perspective to 100 rem. In general, a perspective property defines how far the element is away from the user. Now we need to rotate both elements, I mean the image and the form. So I'm going to use transform. With rotate function, we need to rotate element vertically according to the y-axis. Let's insert here 20 degrees. Then we need the same transform rotate for the form, but with opposite direction. We need minus 20 degrees. Alright, so as you can see, the elements are rotated, and the only thing that we have to do is to create a hover effect. I'm going to move the elements a little bit up once we hover over them, and also I'm going to change the shadow. So let's go ahead and select form IMG with hover. Then use transform. We need here translate function with y direction. So in order to move the element up, we have to insert here negative value, let's say minus 2 rem. And also we need again rotate y with 20 degrees. Next I'm going to change the box shadow. Let's insert here minus 5 rem, then 5 rem, 7 rem, and the color AAA. Also let's use transition with the values all, 0.5 seconds. Next we need the same hover effect with the form element. So let's select contact form with hover. Then I'm going to grab those styles from here. We need here to change 20 degrees into minus 20 degrees. And also instead of minus 5 rem, we need 5 rem. Also let's use transition with the values all and 0.5 seconds. Alright, so everything looks pretty nice, and the only thing that we have to do is to customize this paragraph here. So let's select it with the class name copyright. Then increase the font size, make it 2 rem. Change letter spacing make it 0.2 rem. Also, I'm going to set color to 444 and create space at the top using margin top with the value 5 rem. Alright, so that's it about the contact section. We are done with it, and actually we have already created all the sections of this project. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is to make the navbar work, and also I'm going to create a button which will allow us to scroll up smoothly. Alright, let's go ahead and start with the navigation. We have here 4 different navigation items and they are proper sections. So once I click the navigation items, then we should navigate to the relevant sections smoothly. In order to do that, we have to connect nav links to these sections using href and id attributes. The values of those attributes should match. So let's go ahead and assign to all navbar links href attributes. The first one is going to be home. Then we will have customers. The next one will be team. As for the last one, it's going to be contact. After that, we have to assign to all 4 section elements ID attributes with the same values. So let's assign to the first section, insert here home. Then for the second section, it's going to be customers. Next, we will have team. And lastly, contact. Okay, so now if I click the navigation items, then we will navigate to the proper section, but right now without any smooth effect. In order to fix that, we have to use one of the properties called scroll behavior, and we have to assign it to the HTML element. The value is going to be smooth. So now if we click the nav links, we will navigate smoothly. Alright, that's it about the navigation. Now, as I promised, we're going to create a fixed button which will allow us to scroll up to the first section, I mean home. At first, let's create a button in the HTML file. It's going to be the link element. Let's assign to it class scroll up btn. Next, I'm going to insert here the font awesome icon. Let's assign to it classes FAS, FA, arrow up. Then select it in CSS file. First of all, let's define width and height. I'm going to make both of them 5 rem. Then change the background color. I'm going to use here RGBA value. Let's insert here 50231.255 and the opacity 0.8. So the button is going to be fixed. It should be placed at the bottom right corner. So let's set position to fixed and then define bottom and right properties, both of them as 5 rem. Okay, so here we have the button which has a fixed position. Let's add to it a couple of more styles. I'm going to make it rounded. Let's set border radius to 50%. Then increase font size. Let's set it to 1.6 rem. Also change the color, make it white. And lastly, I'm going to place the icon in the center. So let's use Flexbox. We need display flex. Justify content center and align item center. Alright, so the button is customized, and before I make it work, let's add to it a little hover effect. Let's select button with hover. Once we hover over the button, I'm going to change its background color slightly. So let's use here color 32E7FF and then use transition with background color and with the duration 0.5 seconds. Alright, so everything is ready. Now we just need to make this button work, and for that we have to specify the href attribute. We need to insert here home. So now if I scroll down and then click the button, then it will scroll up back to the first section. Alright, so that's it. We have finished building our project. The only thing that we need to do is to make it responsive to different screen sizes. Alright, so as you know, this project is built on the extra large screen size. I'm in the screen size with 1920 pixels of width and 1080 pixels of height. Now we have to make it responsive to different screen sizes. Let's go ahead and inspect the page and switch to the responsive mode. So I have already prepared different breakpoints on which we need to make some changes, so I'm not going to waste time on finding them. The first breakpoint on which I'm going to make some changes is going to be 1400 pixels. As you see, the project needs some changes, so let's go ahead and insert here new comments, responsive, end of responsive, then create a new CSS media query and specify max width as 1400 pixels. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to move the floating background a little bit down. So let's go ahead and select it and change its top position. I'm going to make it minus 120 viewport width. Next, let's take care of the heading. So let's go ahead and select it. At first, I'm going to decrease the font size. Let's make it 6 rem. Also change its position. Let's set top to 25 viewport width. And also I'm going to change its width. Let's make it 70 rem. Alright, so as you can see, the section heading is looking good. Next, I'm going to decrease the font size of the navigation items slightly. So let's go ahead and select navbar link and set its font size to 2 rem. Okay, that's it about the navbar. Let's move on and take care of the logo, which right now is too bigger, and also I'm going to move it a little bit down. So let's select logo, set its top position to 75%. After that, I'm going to select the font awesome icon. Let's decrease its font size, make it 10 rem. Okay, so that's it about the first section. Next, I'm going to take care of the second section. At first, let's customize the heading. I mean all section headings. Let's select them. I'm going to decrease the font size, make it 8 rem. And also change margin bottom, make it 10 rem. Okay, so the heading looks good. Right now, each section has the height defined in viewport height, and I'm going to change it and make the height auto. In this case, the section will take up the height that is required to display the content. Alright, next I'm going to take care of the cards. I want to place them on different lines, and also I'm going to create some space around each card. So first of all, let's select wrapper, customers wrapper. In order to place the cards on different lines, we have to use flex wrap property, and we need to set it to wrap. After that, let's select card itself. We need customer and define margin as 5 rem at the top and bottom and 10 rem on the left and right sides. Okay, that's it about the second section. Let's move on and do the same for the third one. Let's select section 3 and set height to auto. Then we need to select the wrapper, team wrapper. Then set flex wrap to wrap. And lastly, select the card itself, team member, and define margin as 5 rem at the top and bottom, and 10 rem on the left and right sides. Okay, lastly, I'm going to take care of the contact section. Let's increase the size of the background. Select form container and set its height to 60%. Next, I'm going to hide the image at all. So let's select form img and assign to it display with the value none. Okay, so as you can see, the image is hidden. Besides that, I think we no longer need to rotate the form itself. So let's select contact form. Then use transform property with translate function. We need to set it to 0. And finally, let's change the hover effect. Right now the form moves up by 2 rem, and I'm going to change it and make it 1. So let's select contact form with hover. Then grab this line of code and instead of 0, let's insert here -1 rem. Okay, finally, let's create some space at the bottom of the paragraph. Right now it has a margin top with the value 5 rem. I'm going to add to it margin at the bottom as well. So let's select paragraph and define margin with the following values. We need 5 rem at the top, then 0 on the right side, 4 rem at the bottom, and 0 on the left side. Alright, that's it. I think the project looks good on that breakpoint. So let's move on and find the next one, which I think is going to be 1150 pixels. So let's go ahead and create new CSS media and specify max width as 1150 pixels. At first, let's move the floating background down. So let's select it and set top position to -110 viewport width. After that, as you can see, we need to customize the heading element. So let's select it. I'm going to set its font size to 5 rem. Then change the top position, make it 30 viewport width. As for the width, I'm going to decrease it to 60 rem. Alright, lastly, let's decrease the size of the logo slightly. Let's select font awesome icon and set font size to 9 rem. Alright, so as you can see, the first section looks good, and actually all other sections look good as well. So I'm going to take care of the next breakpoint. The next one is going to be 950 pixels. So let's create new CSS media and specify here the max width as 950 pixels. On this breakpoint, I'm going to take care of the first section again. So let's select floating background and again change its position. I'm going to move it a little bit down. So let's set top to -100 viewport width. And also take care of the heading. I'm going to change its position. Let's set top to 40 viewport width. Alright, the only thing that I'm going to do on the breakpoint is to increase space between the navigation items. So let's select navbar and use justify content property with the value space around. Okay, so that's it on the breakpoint. Let's move on and find the next one. I think it's going to be 750 pixels. So again, I'm going to create new CSS media query with the max width 750 pixels. So the first thing that I'm going to do on the breakpoint is to decrease the font size of the HTML element. Let's set it to 50%. Actually, it will affect all the elements. So as you can see, the sizes of the elements are decreased. Next, I'm going to move again the floating background a little bit down. So let's select it and set top position, in this case to -90 viewport width. After that, I'm going to move the heading a little bit down as well. So let's select it and define top property, make it 48 viewport width. And finally, I'm going to decrease space at the bottom of the section heading. Let's set margin bottom to 5 rand. Alright, so that's it on that breakpoint. All the sections look good. And now we have to move on and make some changes on the last breakpoint, which is going to be 550 pixels. Okay, let's create new CSS media and specify the max width as 550 pixels. Let's decrease again the font size of the HTML element. In this case, I'm going to set it to 45%. After that, let's take care of the floating background and the heading as well. I'm going to change the top position. Let's make it -70 viewport width. Then select section 1 heading. I'm going to change its top position. Let's make it 65 viewport width. Also change the width, make it 42 rem. And then decrease the font size, make it 3.5 rem. Okay, so the first section looks nice. Next, I'm going to decrease the font size of the section headings. So let's select them and set the font size to 6 rem. After that, I'm going to customize the cards. As you can see, we need to increase the width of the cards, but actually each card already has enough width, and the problem here is the margin on the left and right sides. So let's select customer. I'm going to define margin as 5 rem at the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right sides. Let's do the same for team member as well. Let's set margin to 5 rem and 0. Alright, that's it about the second and the third sections. Cards look good. Let's move on and customize the fourth section. I'm in the contact section. At first, I'm going to change the height and set it to overall. Next, I'm going to hide the background. So let's select form container. I'm going to set background color to transparent. And also get rid of box shadow. Let's set it to none. Alright, so as you can see, the background is hidden. Next, let's take care of the form itself. I'm going to decrease the box shadow. Let's select contact form and set box shadow to 1 rem twice, then 2 rem, and the color AAA. Next, I'm going to change the box shadow on hover as well. Let's duplicate this code here, add hover to contact form, and change the values. Let's use here 2 rem twice, and then 3 rem. Okay, that's it about the form element. Lastly, I'm going to customize the paragraph, and also I want to move the scroll button to the corner. So at first, let's select paragraph with the class copyright. I'm going to decrease the font size slightly. Let's make it 1.8 rem. Then set margin to 5 rem, and also use text align center. As for the button, I'm going to set both positions, I mean bottom and right, to 2 rem. Alright, that's it. All the sections look good and we have finished working on it. I hope you enjoyed it and learned some new and interesting stuff. Let's move on.